Welcome back to What's Right. If it's your first time here, welcome to What's Right. My guest this week is a dear friend. He's a Grammy Award winning engineer and producer. He's worked with Cross-Canadian Ragweed, Dixie Chicks, Adam Carroll, Brian Keane, Mike and the Moon Pies, Mickey and the Motor Cars, Jimmy LaFave. I mean, the list goes on. And we had a great conversation. We appreciate having him here. Adam Odor, everybody. Could have called me.
I was trying to get we're trying to get Mason Lively on it.
Hell yeah.
I'm like, Mason's right there.
Are you representing him?
Yeah. So,
when did that whole side of your working in the industry even start?
Dude, so the non-producing engineering mixing side of me started in about 16, I think.
Okay.
And so it was basically, we had made Mike and the Moon Pies live at the Windstar. And I had seen the Moon Pies, but I had never met Mike or anything. Mm-hmm. And so we made that record, and I cut it for 3 days. It was a last minute, friend was supposed to be engineering it. He got called on another gig and was like, "Are you around this weekend? You know, it pays, give you a room at the Windstar and everything." I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll go do it. I like the Moon Pies."
Yeah.
And went, and I was like, man, these guys are great. And that first night we recorded, and then Mike and I sat down at the bar and just started talking, and we're like, man, what would you want to do for a studio record? And so we started planning what became the Steak Night record. But we're just like, man, this is going to be cool. And so as we were prepping the Steak Night record and how we are going to do it, he was just going to play the song for the band for the first time. And then we're going to work up an arrangement, cut it live, you know, maybe do some punches here and there, but like work up the parts and stuff. And then once that song was done, move on to the next.
Right.
And that's how we're going to make this record and make it a record that you can play live. So as we were talking about this and then developing it and everything, we started like getting an idea of how to release the record. Well, what's a good plan too and stuff. And then he was like, man, do you want to manage with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. I've never done that. Like, what's another thing to do?
Yeah.
You know? So that got me into it. So that would have been probably 17.
Where do you even start? Like,
and
just start. Do you start just reaching out to the people you already know?
Yeah, you know, it's just like they had Red 11 already in booking and stuff, and so things were coming in. And my first call, honestly, was getting a publicist.
Sure.
Because I was like, okay, we got these ideas, which wasn't a crazy idea to release it, but we had a time frame and you know, knew what dates were going on, so we could make that a album release tour and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so a friend of mine who is the Austin TuneCore rep, Amy, she was like, well, I used to work with, she used to manage Nico Case, and she was like, I worked with this one publicist, Alexis Tedford. And
that's who I use.
Yeah, and so we met in 17 and then have just been close ever since.
Yeah, she's great.
But it was funny because it was just like, that's the first thing we ever did was hire that. He had already done Texas radio promotion and stuff, and so we had just used the people that we know for that record for songs, like, you know, calling radio stations we knew.
Right.
And he had developed a pretty wide array of stations that loved the Moon Pies at that point. Cool. And that was from the Mockingbird record. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, okay, so we had, you know, we knew kind of Beaches of Biloxi was going to be that song. We just felt like that, something about that tune.
Sure.
And then, of course, Steak Night became Steak Night and stuff like that. But we just put it out and had a publicist that was there. She was answering questions, but any weird, wacky idea we had, she was right on top of it and just being like, okay, you know, we can reach out to these people for this. And we knew, you know, like Saving Country Music was kind of into it and Rolling Stone and stuff like that. And so, which we developed those relationships as years have gone by. But it was just kind of one of those things of like, well, hell, let's just try things. And then before that record even came out, because that record came out, I think, the end of January, beginning of February of 18. Hold on. Yeah, 18. So that would have been January of 18. December of 17. Mike and I already came up with the idea of I was watching a thing on Frank Sinatra. I was like, man, what if we did a country record with strings and did this cosmopolitan country thing? I don't know, just listening to a lot of Glenn Campbell and stuff.
Yeah.
And Dave Percival Yellow Dog was just like, well, let's call Abbey Road. I was like, we'll get a price quote.
Yeah.
And we did, and then that's what started it. So we were thinking about Cheap Silver before Steak Night even was released to the public.
Oh, wow.
And so it was one of those things of like...
So I remember that because what year was that?
So the record itself came out August of 19.
Right, but 2 years prior to that, I'm at Yellow Dog in the funk bunker while y'all are making that record, trying to practice piano and because I got booked to do a bunch of piano gigs, and I only knew how to play a couple of songs.
Dude, yes.
So that's when I even knew that y'all were that far ahead of the game.
Because that was sometime like in spring of 18.
Literally something had just come out or was about to come out, and y'all were working on something, even 2 releases before that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and I'm over here just like practicing for this gig next week,
I now remember that because we spent a week writing the record.
Yep.
To get so we could know it, so Dave could write the string arrangements because we knew we were going to go to Abbey Road in August of 18.
You got to get it done to then.
And so we're like, okay, we got to get this in our heads so that way we're not wasting time when we're there. And it's so funny.
Are y'all that far ahead of the releasing process still?
Probably not, just because the band was so busy.
Yeah.
And like after, of course, Cheap Silver did great. Then we hit COVID. COVID, we really quick finished what became the Gary Stewart record, and then started writing the One to Grow On record. Finished it, released it, and then touring just became nuts once everything like really reopened. And then it was just like getting on and just building it and planning on East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, doing all that. And so Mike's been writing a lot, and then we've been writing, and then. Like right now, we're at a point where we're tracked. We probably tracked like 11 or 12. Some we're going to hold off. And then I know we're coming back at the end of October to finish recording and then hopefully finish up overdubs and stuff. And see, but during this time, we've got the live record that came out that we recorded last summer.
Yeah.
And next month, we'll be releasing the film of that from The Devil's Backbone. So
excited to see that.
It's so, yeah.
The photos look great.
It was, Carly, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Kicking ass, the photos and everything,
1,000,000%.
Jess at Devil's Backbone Tavern and our buddy Bo, he kind of did the set design. I mean, basically, it was just like we had an idea, and then Bo was like, I got you.
That's great.
And so all of a sudden,
I love the hay and everything. It was
saddles and everything.
Such a hoedown. It just looked like a hoedown.
And what was cool was that we knew going into it what we kind of wanted that look and how we wanted the movie to look, and we got Tony and Texas Music Scene to film it, but really like paid attention to the lighting, and we're like, we don't want that new LED look.
Right.
Like we want everything to be depthful, but we want it to still like. Wow. You don't know what year it is.
I love that.
And so we really worked hard. And you can even see in Carly's pictures.
Yeah.
Of just like the way the lighting is. It seems like it's maybe the 70s.
Yeah, and like.
It's not, but it's. Yeah.
What a wonderful band.
What a
wonderful act to do that with. Just to be like a time machine.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
And then still push what we're doing. It's like every record is different. Everything is, And so as that's been progressing. I eventually, just from me and Mike managing the band in 2020, during the beginning of COVID, we were talking before, but I joined Space Kernel Management.
Right.
And then just kind of got into that world with Adam Barnes and J.R. Denson, and then we've expanded Space Kernel over the years after everything opened up with more managers and more acts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so now... Mike is overseeing the band stuff. So all the Moon Pie stuff is back to Mike managing.
Cool.
And I'm dealing with all our catalog, our songs, and the production and stuff, still doing what I did creatively with them. And so that kind of opened up stuff. And so right now I've got somebody I'm co-managing with, Kimberly Wooten, who was like from Luck Reunion and stuff like that. But we've got Mason Lively right now that we're planning and putting things into motion for and stuff like that. He's got a record in the back, and then we're talking to maybe a couple other artists to see.
How do you find or decide?
Mason kind of reached out to me just randomly and stuff, and I had some stuff going on with my family at the time, and I was like, I can't really like be on it right now, but if you're still interested, afterwards, I really love your record, and the fact that it's a full open palette, like you're not in a rush to put it out, but you want to make sure everything is done right so you don't waste the release. And I was like, yeah. And so when I got through all my family stuff, he was still there, and so we just started talking, and
cool,
and just kind of, and it's always a process. Like,
yeah,
I don't think you ever just jump into managing, or it's just like producing. You just don't jump into producing a record or writing with somebody,
right? And
it's just like you just develop something, and then if it works, like, okay, let's do this together, So that's what, and even with Kim from Luck, we had been talking for over a year, and she'd call up, and I just answer the call and help her out on stuff, and she is so connected from doing that Luck reunion stuff for so many years. She knows every booking agency, every other manager, all these acts, tour managers, all this stuff. So it just made sense that she wanted to get into the management game.
Right.
And me and Adam and JR were talking, and we're like, yeah, we should bring her in, and just see and start. And I was like, well, she and I can co-manage this Mason thing while, I'm still producing records and doing that. Like, I can't not sit down,
Yeah. Is that a part of the key to longevity in this industry?
I think
is like evolving and like not even necessarily stopping doing something, just adding something else.
Yes.
Is that the key to it?
I think so, because it's like,
Do you get burned out?
I think you get burned out on doing the same thing over and over. So that's what I think. Like, it was nice to not produce as much for a little while when I was just concentrating on the Moon Pie stuff. But then it was just like, man, I missed it. And certain things just like, and I always like produced more than just the Moon Pies during that time. But it was just light here and there. And then just like Juliana Rankin hit me up, and I loved her. And that immediately turned into a songwriting thing.
Cool.
Because not only did I like her songs, but I was like, it was that, like, I never forced myself in, but it was just like, hey, this is a good line, but something else can make it great. And I would just be like, think of, everything from, look what you're doing in the first verse and the story that you're telling, and tie things around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then she was just like, well, what would you put there? And so it started off that to the point now where it's just like randomly texting each other lines and stuff like that. Or here's a melody I got
right now.
Yeah, it really is.
Voice is it always collaborative with you? Did it ever at least in the beginning, did it start with like you making stuff by yourself and writing songs by yourself? Or?
No, I never, in my high school band, I tried writing and stuff, and I was never getting the lines out of my head that I wanted.
Sure.
Like, I was like, this works, but it's not really what I want. But I was always just musically writing stuff.
Okay.
Like, okay, here's the part. What if I do this and do that, and expand this? And then we started, I started at Cedar Creek in 99, and, as I was the intern first, and then immediately, like 4 months in, I was about to stop interning and just go on the road full time with Dub Miller and stuff. And it was like, well, hey, do you want the engineering job? Like, you can be head engineer. Lloyd likes working with you. And
you're like, yes.
And I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so that
not dissimilar to like Casey and Dave's story.
Oh, straight up.
And maybe that's just how it goes.
I think so. I think everybody always has somebody that they're working under, and then that person pushes you to like, well, go do this yourself.
Did it also, before that happened, was music just your everyday already?
It was growing up until I moved to Texas, and then it went away. So growing up, I was in every operetta, I was in choir, I was doing this stuff. My dad taught me bass. I was teaching myself piano because I could read music, and so it was around me all the time. My dad, even though he was working all the time, like, he was an insurance agent, and then just completely got tired of insurance, learned how to run sound, and he started kind of managing local bands outside of Philadelphia, like country cover bands. Taught, like, at 40 years old, started teaching himself guitar.
Wow.
Like, didn't do that. But my older half-brother, his oldest boy, who's 10 years older than me, he was always a piano player.
Oh, wow.
piano player in church. He had like an early 80s, that style.
Yeah.
Like that was his big thing. And so what's crazy though is that me, my dad, and my brother, we've never played music together.
That's
like all
crazy.
three of us, even though we're all players.
Oh my God, that's
and
crazy.
we talk about it, and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, like when we're all together, but we've just never have.
That's like what connects me and my dad.
Oh, yeah.
It's like jamming.
Yeah.
And talking about jamming and talk, every week, Thursday or Friday, one of us will call the other and be like, are you getting ready to getting your clothes together for the weekend and getting your amp together for, what I'm saying? My dad's a drummer, but,
Well, it's funny because, so I moved to Texas and there was no music. And I didn't have an instrument with me and stuff, but they didn't have, they weren't doing one-act play. They weren't doing any of that stuff. And so, and I'm up by Amarillo. And so it's just like, okay, I'm going to play sports. And then some new kids moved in between our junior and senior year. And two of them were brothers, and they had a country band. And their bass player was leaving. Like, bass player was either going to college or something like that. And I was like, well, I mean, I've played bass for years.
Yeah.
So they let me borrow a bass, and I just woodshed. They gave me a set list. And so it's...
And you learned it.
And so it's 1995. And so imagine the country hits of that.
Yeah.
So it's just like we're doing Garth and Lone Star, and Alan Jackson and all this sort of stuff.
That's crazy.
And I was already listening to that stuff, obviously, because that was, there was the only concerts we saw in Amarillo.
Yeah, and that's just what was on.
Yeah, it was just everywhere. And so, and I was listening to at that point I was heavy into the blues too.
Cool.
So a lot of Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
A lot of George Thorogood and the Destroyers.
Yeah.
I was this huge fan, so I was learning that stuff too, just because I liked it. And the guitar player in the band loved playing Stevie stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like I was doing that, and then we all graduated high school. We moved to Lubbock. And I took a year between high school and college because I just wanted to make the band work, and we were playing these shitty bars in Lubbock and everything, giddy ups, and just these terrible, but awesome. And one day I was welding during the day and playing music at night. And then one day this guy walks in and he was just like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 18, just turned 18. And he was just like, we have a music school in Levelland, 20 minutes down the road. And he's just like, come out and see the campus. And so I did, and I saw recording, and I was like, I want to learn how to record.
That's cool.
And so instantly just fell into that, played bass in every ensemble, contemporary Christian, the touring ensemble, country, Western swing, jazz, whatever, and just did it all.
Yeah, full circle to now you're going there and talking about doing that.
Yeah,
not
it's
just
great.
the bass playing, but the recording and everything.
Yeah, it's great going there and and I'm on the advisory board, so we talk about, what needs to be bought and funding and all that sort of stuff and everything. And so it's fun to just go back there and do that,
Dude.
And yeah, it's so weird. So going in from that, having mentors, like going into Cedar Creek, them believing in me, having mentors, Lloyd then pushing me to produce stuff that he didn't have time to produce. He'd be like, you got a good ear, you already know how to do this.
Go
trust yourself,
yeah.
And do this, and not him not being afraid. Like I'd get him to play steel on something and he'd be like, well, I wouldn't do that here. Or, check, the tuning's a little off here, work on that, maybe recut that and stuff. And so he was very, open. So then I started working with other producers, which then turned around and made me like, okay, I don't want to be just a house engineer.
Right.
Like I want to go out and do things. And that turned into the first Ragweed record me and McClure did, which is Garage.
Yeah.
And McClure is the one that got me into songwriting.
Wow.
Because he was just like, he started playing something and I was like, I'll go to these chords. And he said a line. And I said a line back. And so that opened up that side of me.
Wow.
So then when it was like, if I got bored with producing or something like that, I'd go write. It's like, and it would keep me from just, becoming one of those burned out producer engineer guys.
This episode of What's Right is brought to you by Wonderland Records. Wonderland Records is a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space based in Clyde, Texas. You can ask for dates and ask for a tour at Instagram at _Wonderland Records _. Thank you, Wonderland Records. when Mac is writing, is it like any line could be the next line?
Yes.
It's not like he's not like real close to it.
No, it's just
He's
you
written too
throw
many
it out
songs.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, just like see if it sticks, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like I will, if I haven't written in a while, I internalize. But then once I'm in my flow, I learned that it was just like, just throw it out there. And then I'll be like, with a co-write, I'll be like, this is what I want to say.
Yeah.
You know, and I just can't think of it. And then they might say something, and then I'll say it back. And then it used to be, I would be like, that's my line. That's so-and-so's line.
That's
and stuff.
funny.
And I was that way. And now all of a sudden, like, as it like progressed, I was like, I don't remember who wrote what.
Yeah. Well, Lori McKenna says sometimes you're just the cheerleader. You know, like when it comes to co-writing, sometimes you're just there to like steer. You know?
Or like it's somebody literally just wants to make sure that like their song is good enough. Like they bring it to you.
It's also like knowing your strengths are good, because I'm best at like, if we sit down and you're like, this is my premise, this is the idea I'm going for. I'm good at like giving you something back.
Yeah.
And like I can land on the rhyme and stuff like that. It's like coming up with the idea is the art. Is like, to me, like, you know, putting it together seems like the art, but it's like that part can be easy as long as you know what we're talking about.
Yes.
And if I'm like figuring that out, if I'm writing as like some type of like release of stuff, like, and you don't even know what it's about yet, that's why you can't finish the song.
Yes.
That's why I can't finish the song.
I always have to know what the story is.
Yeah.
Or where, you know, and sometimes
it's easy to land it if you know where you're going.
Yeah. And especially if somebody brings the song in, it's like I want to know the backstory.
Yeah,
I want to know where you're there so I can get in that headspace too and start thinking of how that maybe I've experienced the same thing. And it's funny because are you a words and melody guy? Are you just
I think it comes in all shapes and sizes, you know, but I think the best formula that I've figured out for me doing it, and I guess my favorite way of doing it, is like premise first and kind of knowing the beats before I even start.
Yeah.
And then I know this big picture thing that I want to say, and then while I'm thinking about that, I start noodling with music and melodies. When I find something that feels like vibrationally appropriate, that's when I start thinking about words, and that's when I start thinking about specific melodies.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're fumbling around, you'll start finding melodies. You're like, okay, this song's about rain. Okay, rain. Okay, fuck. This feels like, you know, whatever. You know, rain's a stupid example, but you know what I mean.
It has a feeling, you know, and that's
I just jot throughout my day all the time. I'm always kind of jotting one-liners down.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, you know what I'm saying? If it strikes me in a certain way that those things do, that I hate hearing it in conversation like this, like that's a song right there, but when that moment happens, I do jot it down.
Yeah.
And when I'm having this moment of like inspiration, or I'm having this moment of like creating something musically, I look back at it. And that's where like that kind of acts as like a seed of the song. It may not be the first line, but it'll be in there somewhere.
So it's funny because like I'll have voice memos that are just melodies.
Yeah.
That I'll be driving down the road and something will hit me and I'll do it, and I'll always say just the words that I want it to sound like for certain
even if it's elbow.
Yeah. Accents are gonna have this feeling of a word and stuff like that.
So you're in the car and you're like, something with the elbow. When really, and you get to the writing and it'll be like fail though. Or something, you know.
But it's something completely different, you know, which is apparently how like I've listened and read so much Tweety stuff that he's that way. Yeah. You know, and that some of that stuff, it comes up because he wants just the feelings of those words. And
I think that's a very like Timbaland Pharrell thing too, just to be like, I hear these sounds. It's like we'll make the words fit.
Yes.
You know, it's like I want these sounds. And it's an abstract thought, like, is that when because you do like marathon sessions, like you're definitely known for that.
Yeah.
And so like when do you know when you're dialing in tone, or you're just patiently waiting for the take, that feeling of like that's it? Do you stop there, or do you keep pushing past there too?
No, I'll stop. Once I feel it, I stop.
You know, it's like that's the one.
That's the one. Yeah. And so, but I will sometimes only push. I'll push if I think that something else can come out of it.
That maybe you haven't found
Like,
yet.
yeah, like, okay, this is it and we nailed it, but there's something that's missing.
Yeah.
And whether it's a chord or a change or vocally when we're doing vocals, like I'll stop and I'll be like, I got something in my head.
Yeah.
And I might pace real quick. I might grab a guitar, do something, or just even like, it's why Harmar and I just have that thing together, because he'll know if I'm thinking of something. Like, he'll look at my face and he'll be like, we're not done yet.
Right.
And then we'll build into that and he'll be like, what is it? And stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I need this feeling to happen, whether it's not, and he'll fool around on some chords and stuff, which was great because he and I did what will be coming out later. Darby's record is turning into a whole multimedia thing.
That's nice.
And so it probably won't see the light of day till 25 or 26.
Who's in a? You can't rush greatness. I was about to say perfection, but that's not even what we're striving for. It's like if it feels like it's great, and that you can make something even blossom more in it. It's like, we're not in a hurry for it.
Yeah,
keep growing it.
That's
keep nurturing it.
And I know in this day and age, especially, like, everybody wants to just put stuff out and do this, and like, I need something else to bring listeners in and stuff. And I'm like,
that's all true. Do that with something else.
Yes,
this can be a masterpiece. Then it deserves time.
Don't waste the time.
Yeah.
Don't waste the art.
Yes.
To hit what somebody else is telling you to do. This Dallas Borough record me and McClure are doing right now, he's also at the same time making another acoustic record with Lloyd. And last night and this morning we had a discussion about he's like, well, how do you think about releasing this? And I was like, well, here's what I would do, and kind of just top of my head spilled out. And he was just like, yeah. And I was just like, this record that McClure and I are doing is just like, I know how strong it is for him.
Yeah.
And it's a band sound and this cool, fun thing. And I'm just
more
like,
boxes to check.
Oh, yeah.
On the back end.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, I think, you got this great record with Lloyd, and what you just put out that Jonathan Tyler produced. I'm like, what if you do this and then we do this later? And then, and then so if this one comes out in the summer.
Yeah.
The next one comes out at the end of the winter and stuff like that, and you're not wasting anything, and you're gaining listeners, and you haven't wasted either product and stuff. And it's like, so that's the thing with Darby. It's just like, so, Harmeyer and I co-produced that and it's me. Well, I'm not even playing anything. So it's just Darby, Mike, and Casey on upright, and then throwing a little bit of dobro and stuff here and a little bit of baritone and everything. But it's like this whole story record.
Nice. And
it's expanded into, let's do this, and we've gotten directors involved and stuff, and we're like, well, we don't need to rush this record out.
No.
We just sit on it, and Darby is the type that's like, well, I've got 25 other songs here.
Right.
Maybe I should finish some of these and do this. And so, we're discussing on doing another record and putting that out before this other record gets done, because it's like we feel just so passionate about the art itself.
Right.
That I don't want to waste any bit of it, and I'm just like, I don't want it to lose any momentum. If that means we don't touch it for a year because we're filming all this stuff and doing all this stuff, then that's what it is. And, then when everything is, then we'll plan the release and it will come out how it does. And, we want to shop around the multimedia part of it, and see if there's anybody, in a world that I've never been a part of,
like the streaming world,
other than,
world.
and the film stuff,
Exactly.
and doing it,
Yeah, I feel like the obligation to be in a hurry has kept Gage and I from putting some really compelling video to the music, We've written, for every album, we've written a script for, some visual representation of the whole album, you know, and just being in it does feel like we're in such a hurry that it feels like by the time we have the time to go make that a priority, the album's been out a year, and like we're already releasing other things unrelated to it,
Yeah.
It'd be nice to go back and do some of them,
Well, and the good thing is, I think in this day and age, you can go back and like put videos out for older stuff.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's like, why not? It's because
Yeah.
ultimately it's going to be your collection of art,
Sure.
and when people find it later, they're not going to know. Like they're not going to care about the timeline.
I think something that when we're making the music, we are conscious of, but when we're making the content, we're not conscious of. Is like this. The point of it is to be timeless.
Yes.
And not to be right now. And so like I was talking like a year was like a big difference, but like in 50 years that's not going to matter. It's not going to matter that we waited 2 years after the release to put this visual composition with it or something. That's totally right.
And it's funny, you talk about like a year is not a big deal, and I'm realizing the more that I got into management and dealing with labels and stuff like that, and I'm realizing, I'm like, it's not, if you have a team of people that tell you, okay, we can't release this record correctly for another year, but when we do, we want to put this and this together, and we want you to do this and do that and stuff. And it's just like, I'm like, just go make some other art while you're waiting.
Yeah.
But do that. Like, take advantage of that.
Commit to the process.
Yeah, because I'm like, if you say, I think everything should be a collaboration. Making the record should be a collaboration.
Yes.
Releasing the record should be a collaboration. You have teams of people doing it. And if somebody is telling you, we believe in this so much that if you wait till we're ready to do it.
Yeah.
And then I look at the movie world.
Yeah.
And the movie world is like, they made that film 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I just listened to an audio book for the making of Airplane.
Wow.
And it's crazy because it's these three dudes, two brothers and their friend, that grew up together, that they in Milwaukee and moved to LA, like took their money while they were in college, moved to LA, and what they had done in Milwaukee was like a kind of a live action theater mixed with, they had an early video camera and were just filming sketches. Then they moved to LA. They lease out a theater, an old theater, have to do all the work themselves. But they continue on that. They call it Kentucky Fried Theater. They build that up into this huge thing. Then they get John Landau gets involved, and he's willing to direct their first movie which is the Kentucky Fried Movie, which is just a bunch of sketches. Which also at this time you have Lorne Michael coming to. They had the original idea of doing a live sketch television show, but nobody bid on it. So a couple years later, Lorne comes in, and it's just like, we need to do something like this on live television, but he's got the brand new head of NBC with him.
Right.
So that turns into Saturday Night Live, and in all the Saturday Night Live history, they do that. But while they're doing this, they have this random idea of making a parody of all the disaster movies. And they buy the rights to an old B movie, and that's this flight disaster movie. And they basically start rewriting the script, but they understand, they have this idea. They start in 1975 writing the script and deal with all the stuff until 1980 when Airplane came out. And you had a few people that believed in it, which one was the head of Paramount, Michael Eisner, who ended up being the head of Disney after that. But like, they had this idea of, we are not going to do, like, you have to play this entire movie straight. You have to, like, everything's got to be serious.
You have to commit.
Yeah. Like, you can't wink at the camera. You can't do this. Like, you have to say the lines like, this is the most serious movie. Right. Even though you have random, people getting sick in the background, or, all this sort of stuff, and like you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as the co-pilot and stuff.
Yeah.
And they go through all that, and it's just like, and it changes literally comedy forever.
Yes, thankfully.
And it's just like, and everybody wants to do that. And then they turn around and they do stuff together, but they do Police Squad and the Naked Guns and the Scary Movies and stuff like that. And then like they do, one of them like produces A Walk to Remember and gets into the serious movie stuff and everything. And they're doing all that. And it's just like three dudes that just had an idea.
Yeah.
Trying to make each other laugh, and like changed comedy forever. And it's like, but you look at that process of it taking so long.
Right.
But once that movie came out, it tripled its money in the first weekend. And then it's like, you don't think about how long it took to make that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, I look at, like, I can tell you, we spent a week and a half in the studio at Yellow Dog writing the record of Cheap Silver, and then going back and forth, and then writing new songs and doing this and going there and recording it at Abbey Road and doing all this sort of stuff. But it's like, that was probably a year and a half of my life.
Yeah.
I was doing other things, but I was committed to that
But you were
project.
like working on it actively.
Yeah.
And then
it's
another
like,
year to sit on it probably.
Yeah.
To get all the other ducks in a row.
to get all that and to release it how we released it, without telling anybody we were doing it and all this sort of stuff and getting Rolling Stone involved. It's all that stuff. But now it's like, I can't tell you how long we spent. Like,
Yeah.
we had a crazy long 3 days in the studio with Dallas just because we had so many guests coming in, and Susan
Yeah.
Gibson and Kelly Willis and all these instrumentalists and stuff
Yeah.
like that coming in. And so, and we were pulling long ass hours, and poor Casey, but
Yeah.
but he's there. But it's like, already I'm like, okay, so we had some long days. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's whatever. Like,
Yeah,
who cares?
exactly.
This episode of What's Right is brought to you by Fio Music Group. Fio Music Group is a record label based in Texas that's signed to myself, as well as Dane Pack, Peter Sinclair, and others. They're the reason the lights are on most of the time for all of those households. They've partnered with Yellow Dog Studios so that we're able to have nice things like vinyl records with production value. You can learn more about Fio Music Group by going to the website fiomusicgroup.com.
Was there a moment where, because there had to be a moment where the clientele switched with you, like your clientele, where it went from I'm doing Lloyd's stuff he doesn't have time for to I'm doing big boy records all the time now? And like, maybe, I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, was there a moment where a switch flipped in you where like you put every record on a pedestal that you're working on?
I think there was just a moment.
Like everyone could be the next Grammy. Like like
I
as far as its importance.
Yeah, I think there was just a moment of more of just trusting myself.
Wow. Okay.
And it was just like, okay, like for me, the Moon Pies were like, I saw something in Mike in the band, and I was like, man, we could create together, and this could be fun, and let's make the Steak Night record. And instantly in that, it's like, because they were right on that area of, a lot of people still remembered the 4-hour dance band,
Right.
and doing the late shows,
Right.
Hotel Vegas and all that sort of stuff. And that was that band and the White Horse and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, they're like, Mike is this in-depth songwriter, and this band
Yes.
is better than most.
Legit. And can I be I don't know if I'm the first to say it. You heard it here first. But like, what, not to be dramatic,
Yeah.
but what Ruben did to Johnny Cash, to Tom Petty, that is equally what your presence with the Moon Pies has done.
Dude.
Because Johnny Cash, yeah, he's a hero now, but it's like before that last record, like there wasn't a lot of people talking very good about Johnny Cash.
No, which is crazy.
And this guy was like, no, this guy, he's the man in black. It's like starting to put this like image, and it's like, no, it's like, oh, you're right, this is who they are. And yeah, it's undeniable now. But yeah, I remember, like, have you ever addressed like the Midland backstory shit?
Like, we've heard all the stuff and
Uh-huh.
everything, but we're just like, the funny thing is like Mike and Mark and everybody are friends.
Yeah.
And so it's like everybody always wanted to comment, and Mike was like, no,
It's
like,
fine.
Yeah. It's like we're all like hip
It's
and
also
cool.
too, I think Mike and everybody that's been doing it as long as you guys have been doing it is like, whatever works.
Yeah.
What works? What worked for us is going out there and doing it, and what works for another group of people may be just a budget. It's simply a budget, And what, I don't know, do whatever works.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think like, Rick with Johnny Cash was like, I listen and read everything about Rick, and it's just like, he's like, how can this American icon, a guy that changed country music,
Right.
not have a record deal?
Come on.
And not be doing this, like, and stuff. And so he just signs Johnny.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we're just going to make some records because it's cool and fun to do. And I think that's what, my thing with the Moon Pies, we're just like, well, let's see what we can do together. And then it's like, okay, then what else can we do together? And what else can we do together? And we can grow like that. And I'm like seeing this, everybody is seeing them as this bar band. And I'm like, no, they're not a bar band. And Mike never saw them as a bar band.
No.
It was just, it was like, oh, we're creating art, and Mike has something to say. And I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, let's do this. I think
even if you see them or even if you got to see them in like some small club or bar, it was undeniable that they are here tonight. But it's like they are something else, they're, and I see that a lot in our friends, like, but it's just the evolution of like I said, do whatever works. Right at that moment, like doing 4-hour bar gigs worked for them for a long time, and for whatever they were at that time. But that has to grow, and that looks different every time it grows. It looks differently, And
that's I think the biggest thing too is that you just need.
Is it a commit? Is it like a commitment thing to like an image? Is it committing to leveling up yourselves and like just realizing like sometimes that takes gambling on yourself?
It's committing to the gamble.
Okay,
for sure, because it's like you believe in yourself, and then finding a group that also believes that, and finding the team that is willing, like, you know what, you're right, I'm going to do that, because it's like the Beatles had Brian Epstein,
right?
And the Beatles were playing all that stuff and doing the Germany stuff and everything like that, but it was Brian Epstein that's like, you need to look this way, you need to do this, make your answers short, be funny, do this sort of stuff. And even like listening to stuff with Paul, they fell apart after Brian died. Like there was nobody
there was
there.
No backboard for them now.
Yeah. And then I see it, like I'm way big into like audiobooks, like, autobiographies, biographies, all that sort of stuff. And I'm realizing that like there are those people that have, like, listening to Sammy Hagar, him and Eddie were best friends until their manager died.
Wow.
And then so they had one manager with David, and who was originally their tour manager, and I read his autobiography, and then when he saw the infighting going on, and then he left and David left, and then so they had to get a new manager, and they brought in a new manager, and then suddenly they're doing stuff with Sammy, and they're just like, okay. And he was the guy. And Sammy's like, me and Eddie never fought. We never had one crossword until after he passed away, and we had to deal with each other. He goes, we could always go to this one person, and he would make it fine. Mm-hmm. And he goes, so that way, every time we walked in the studio, walked on the road, like, we had a fantastic time, and we were having a blast making music until the manager died.
Wow.
And then that guy, who was the buffer, who was that dude that believed in them, and was making everything work, was just gone. And so then everybody starts fighting again.
Wow.
And I think that's like you build this team around you that believes in you and wants to help you expand, especially knowing that as artists, you're not going to stay in that one thing. Like, every Moon Pies record is different.
Yeah.
Every, you're always constantly writing more and more,
sure,
and not doing the same thing that you did last time.
Right.
And I think that's the key for the longevity of your career, and knowing that you might have a hit and you might get on top of the world, but you create a fan base that wants to travel with you,
right,
and go down this road and everything that you experiment with. I mean, you look at Wilco, you look at bands like that can put out a different record every time, and the fan base goes with it, and then the fan base argues on what's better and what's worse, and blah blah blah, which is great. You want them interacting, and doing that.
Do you have too many like Grammy noms to remember? Do accolades mean anything to you at this point?
No, they did at the very beginning. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And now I don't remember anything. Like
none of them really even.
No, I never, because in my world, my take on the Grammy stuff as a member, is I like advocacy. So it's going to the Capitol. It's trying to change laws to catch up with the digital world.
Right.
So songwriters get paid, artists get paid, and stuff like that. So that's all I really care about. Like, I vote, And
Yeah.
and I push stuff for nomination and stuff.
It's like
But
this is our first year to get accepted to the ballots for the
Yeah.
people to vote, and I like haven't taken my sunglasses off since I got the news. You know,
well, dude, and it's
I've been walking in the grocery store like this,
yeah,
like
what's up?
since I got they don't know,
What's
but I
going
know.
on?
Yeah,
But I know.
yeah.
It's funny because and I think I was blessed early on to have everything that you could want happen.
Cool.
You
and
know?
you're like, okay, I don't have to worry about chasing that now.
Yeah, it's just like it's there. They're there. Cool. Awesome. Move on. Great. And I think for a while there, where I was coming up, you wanted Grammys, you wanted platinum records.
Yeah.
Like the Grammys are different now.
Yeah.
Platinum doesn't really exist.
Not really.
Because it's a
Gold's
weird
the new platinum.
Yeah,
You know?
it's like it's a new algorithm of how many streams equal a buy and all this sort of stuff, and I'm just like, this is just weird, you know. And I can't, but I'd rather, I want to know, are you putting asses in seats?
Yeah, there's all of that. I was about to say, like, because none of that equals meat in the seats.
No,
and like, that's the only thing that matters to me moving forward is like, how do I grow? It's why I started this podcast.
Yeah.
How do I grow awareness just to sell more tickets? You know what I mean?
That's it. It's a fan base. It's growing your fan base. I think I was having this conversation earlier, but I was just like, if you want to look at who I think the most successful band, at least in my generation, is, and it's Metallica, 100%.
Yeah.
You grew that fan base and you kept growing them,
Yeah.
and then they have kids and grandkids that are now into this band
and named after them.
Yeah, and are still selling out stadiums without radio hits.
Yes.
Without doing all this sort of stuff, and being able to play all the new stuff, along with the hits. And you could do multiple nights in the same city playing different songs.
Yeah, and they because of their like stage setup, they can add like another 10,000 people in there just just from how they set up.
I was talking to Dallas Burrow this morning, and I was just like, you look at what they're doing, and I'm like, their social media. So everybody's got to be on whatever TikTok, Reels, all that sort of stuff. So what does their social media people do? Like you watch James walk off stage that's in the
Smoke a
round.
cigar.
Lights up his cigar. His tech is changing his ears out, giving him a guitar. The fans are like, there's like dudes 5 miles away.
They just see him right
and they're
there.
like, and he acknowledges them, and then he goes back up on stage, and you hear Lars kick off the next song, and I'm like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah,
that's the coolest fucking shit.
Especially for that band. And
Yeah.
I think the same thing can be said for the Moon Pies, and I think any band that's like a legit, we are gigging, this is what we do, we tour.
That's
like, it's like, I want to see that. I remember seeing Whiskey Myers with 50 people in the audience, and even then, with all the conviction in the world, Cody goes, "We're Whiskey Myers, and we live on the fucking road."
Yeah,
and they still haven't gotten off that road.
They're still out there,
and that 50 is now, 50,000 at sometimes.
I know, there's artists out there that have 3 million monthly listeners and stuff like that. That I'd be like, I know venue owners that are like, this guy sold 80 tickets. What's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know. I believe in the old school way of growing a fan base. And
how do I get over that hump in the booking world when I'm like, hey, I've been to this market a lot. I have friends, I have fans in this place. It's like I know I don't have more than 300 or 400 monthly listeners on Spotify. I know that, but
you have fans.
But 50 of them are like in Waco.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. It's like,
I got the stats.
It's so weird because that's it. You have the info.
Yeah.
And it's like you almost have to remind this club owner, like, hey, remember what we put in last time?
Yeah.
And I want to go back. And I think there is something to be said about the scarcity of like not overplaying a market and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think in 2023 into 2024, it's with people having less disposable income, you have to be smarter about touring. So the 220 days a year on the road is not really feasible anymore.
Right.
because you have to be way smarter about it.
Yes.
And you have to plan it. And
You can't
it's like,
just go, sure, we'll take that gig now.
and go do it, and it's just like, no, you have to realize when's the last time you were in this city.
Yeah.
What have you put out beforehand and all this sort of stuff.
Are you bringing the same show to town?
Yeah,
You
and
know?
that's it. And that's what I mean. Mike puts a show together, throw some audibles in, stuff like that. But I know
Yeah.
for this West Coast tour, like I sent them as with the new drummer Taylor, like he's got a pad, and Mike was just like, hey, I've got an idea. Like, can you give me some of the strings? And so some of that stuff, for the beginning of Cheap Silver, you can hit a pad.
Yeah.
And the strings come out and stuff, but he's like, we're building a new show because he didn't want to go back to the West Coast playing the same song.
Exactly.
Don't
want to play the same show.
That's it. And I think there's a lot of people that don't do that.
Yeah.
And just go out doing it. And I hear it. I think you should. I don't necessarily think you should read all the comments on all your social media posts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to realize what your fans are talking about.
Okay.
And if your fans are saying, well, we've seen the same show,
Yeah.
That we saw 8 months before,
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff, it's just like it really quick, like they'll turn on you. If you're not updating their stuff,
I suffer. I kind of get a complex sometimes where if I'll read some stuff or I'll do like a live stream and read a lot of stuff, and it seems like the fan base that's wanting to engage prefers like the earlier the better almost for them. Is that a common thing?
No, I think the whole world of the whole like 11 p.m. headliner is dying. Like nobody wants to do that. I remember the first time.
Yeah, I remember that being like the North Star of gigging forever, and I don't even want to do that now.
And now it's like, no, can Showtime start at 8:30? Like, can headliner go on at 8:30?
Yeah.
Because, and especially during the week, because they've got kids, they've got,
Whatever. And
it's hard to get anybody out during the week, like it's easier in Austin, it's easier in Nashville, but it's not even easier in LA. Like
Right.
I've watched that like a Monday and Tuesday night in LA that used to be packed, or like, no, unless you are a band of 18 to 22-year-olds,
Right.
and your fan base is that,
Right.
but it's harder to get people out. It's harder to get people to spend money. So you just have to be smart about your markets, and in a younger band, it's getting in there and doing, hopefully getting support. I believe in, I've said this from the early 2000s on, and I feel like it happened back then for a little while, and then it went away. But I always advise people, like, if you are friends, if you are bands and you are friends, team up.
Yeah.
And don't get jealous.
Yeah.
And get out there, try to kick each other's ass musically every night. Put on the better show.
Yeah.
But go do shows together. And I think the person that fucking did that the best is Co.
Yeah.
Like Co and Parker and all them.
Yeah.
They're
brought
doing
the
stuff
homies.
together, and they're just like, this is what we're going to do. We got there. And I would try to tell bands that. I'm like, go out and just play shows together. Like, go do runs. And it's just like, and I don't know if it's the booking agencies or what.
Yeah.
I know how hard it is for some of us to, like, with some of the Moon Pies things, to, like, no, we're going to take this person out.
Right.
For 4 weeks.
You do. I think sometimes you do have to tell them who you want to bring. But I think, the more that we do that, the more that becomes the norm. And don't you want to have a say in who's out there with you, especially if you're going for like a week or two at a time?
Well, that's it. I think what it is that you have to plan far enough ahead.
Yeah.
You have to be not trying to fill next month. You need to be out there like, okay, in 4 or 5 months,
Right.
I see it, especially with younger bands that are very hungry and trying to do. They're like, man, we got to fill up this weekend and that weekend. The next 3 weeks, man, we just got to find some gigs. And I'm like, don't. As much as it sucks, don't
wait.
Like, look at the opportunities you're getting from 5 months from now, and concentrate on those. And then if space fills up, and I'm like, don't stop hustling.
Yeah.
But don't make or break over what happens. Don't kill what's going to happen in 5 months because you have to try to do something in 3 weeks.
It takes 10 years to learn that. It takes a decade of freaking out once a month and still surviving and
Yes.
being like, oh, okay, this is what I do. It's fine.
Yeah.
And trusting that gamble on yourself. You
And
know?
I'm fortunate enough to, like, I remember when MySpace came out.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, you were the first person. You and T-Bay were the first people in this even world that we live in to even have a podcast.
Yeah.
Everybody has one now.
Yeah,
you know?
now everything, and now we're not doing a podcast.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
just like we got busy, and then every time I felt like it would be cool to come back, it's like, well, yeah, but there's like just 500 million podcasts out now.
Right? Yeah, y'all
You know?
y'all truly were the only one that was like relative to everybody I know.
And said the shit. You know,
Really said it. Yeah, I definitely think that I've encouraged people to come on here and not, keep, not hold back.
Yeah.
But the platform here is a little more artsy fartsy than y'all were. A little more fact. Y'all were trying to throw down some facts on
Yeah,
us.
Mike was being, Howard Stern, and I was just being Robin, like,
Yeah,
playing
dude.
either
Yeah,
devil's
dude. You
advocate
were a great Robin.
or just being like, or calling him out when it wasn't right, or or like, well, here's my experience, which is totally different than yours.
Was that like cathartic to do?
Oh,
Just be like, I'm telling the truth.
Straight up, it was cathartic, and it was just like, it was stuff that just felt like needed to be said.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why he called it, he was like, we're going to call it Bad Truth. And I'm like, that's great, because those are the
Perfect
bad
title.
truths.
Perfect
Those
title.
are the things that you need to be told.
Yeah.
And I think
Did y'all do an episode? Did y'all do an episode or a piece of an episode talking about how to open up properly?
Oh yeah, the opening band.
Yeah.
There's a whole episode on that.
True, like couldn't be more true.
Yeah.
And these bands need to hear it. Regardless if they need to hear it with Tough Love or with Kitten, they just need to know, because there's not a guidebook out there to show you how to do it.
I have a friend that has been in the music business for a while, touring and stuff, opening for a bigger act, did a great run with them, and then that opening act never called back. And they were confused about why that was going on. And we were just talking, and I was letting them, get their emotions out over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said something, and they said that 2 of the shows on the run, they went 3 minutes over. And I said, right there is it.
That's it.
And they're like, that matters? And I'm like, yes.
That matters more than all the other stuff that you were careful about.
And I'll tell you
day.
this, and because we still talk about it, like, so Mike and I are co-producing, Harmeyer and I are co-producing this Rob Linus record. The first time we ever met Rob Linus, we loved his show. He was playing, it was Jackalope Jamboree, and he was playing the side stage, and we were headlining the main stage. And he got off stage on time, and we're just back there, getting ready, blah, blah, blah. And then he went back up and played a song. And we were like, what? And immediately Mike was like,
Never
who
again.
the hell is this dude?
Never
and then
again.
he walks off stage, comes immediately back to us, and it's just like, I just want to apologize. The promoters told me to do this. I would never do that. I would never go over. And then Mike and I looked at each other like, okay, this guy's cool.
All right, yeah.
The next thing you know, we took him out on the road.
Yeah.
And we're just like,
Because
okay.
he would
knew.
not have done that.
No, he would not have done that.
And it's like that, okay, if the promoter, if the venue, if special circumstances, okay, thanks for coming straight to us.
Yeah,
afterwards.
and like the first thing you did was made sure that like this isn't what we do.
Yeah.
Like,
this,
and I was
this isn't, I would have probably told the promoter no.
Yeah, I know.
That's who I am.
Yeah. But
I'm like,
he
no,
did
that's
it,
not how we do it.
And now, it's like we're finishing up this record on him and stuff. Like 2 years later, we're like, we're all like super close. Rob's one of my closest friends.
Like you're headlining, you're done with sound check, but like you're still like getting the stage like the final clean walkthrough, and then like somebody's bringing on their amp already, and I'm like, not yet.
Yeah, just let us finish this, and it's crazy.
You'll know when it's your turn.
Yeah,
no one will be up here.
Yeah.
This episode of What's Right is brought to you by Andor Peppers. Andor Peppers is family owned and operated. They have small batch fermented hot sauces and smoked spice mixes from garden to bottle to table. They have physical locations in West Virginia and Florida. If you can't find them there, if you're not around, you can go to andorpeppers.com. Thank you, Andor Peppers. How do you prepare for, like, I think my next album, I want to lean more into my country songs.
Yeah.
And I want to do more small ensemble stuff. How do you prepare to that versus, like, these big records that you do?
Honestly, most of the stuff, it's always about pre-production, but
Yeah.
most of it's conversations.
Yeah.
And like, what do you want to do with it, and
Yeah.
stuff like Moon Pie's Steak Night record was, there's no extra overdubs on that.
Right.
Everybody plays their parts. We make sure the parts are that, and that it was like you have just those conversations, or this is going to be more of a produced record, or I want this like stripped down with Darby's record. It was like,
Right.
I definitely want it just upright and acoustic. And Harmeyer, I think I was starting to talk about this before, but Harmeyer's mind, like I can be like, Darby wrote him with these chords. I don't want to change any of her melodies, but
Right. He knows the proper like relative minors and stuff to just like be like, what about this?
And do this, and then he would come up with something like, okay, that's it, and I feel so bad for Casey, but I'm just like, dude, I'm going to be telling you to play bass parts that you would not think of.
Yeah.
Like that no bass player would normally play, and they're weird.
Yeah.
But they are going to be harmonizing with what the acoustic's doing.
Right.
And it will all make sense in the end.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And as we're doing it, like I was writing out charts, and I'm like, I know I'm going to do it as numbers, but this is going to be weird. But trust me, when you play it, it'll all make sense. And then it's just like, oh yeah, like it again.
Well,
is
as soon
a
as you
big
hear
sin.
talking about it is so weird.
Yeah.
As soon as you hear it, you're like, God,
Yeah.
Casey as a player is like, oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard this quote a million times, but I love it. But talking about music's like dancing about architecture.
Oh yeah, the dancing about architecture.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I feel that a lot.
It's so weird, but at the same time, when you hear something, you want to talk about it with the people that are involved, like listening with you.
Yes.
And you want to talk about it, even though it's one of those things of like, I feel like instead of ever looking at a deadline, you just always need to you trust your gut of when something is done.
Mm-hmm.
And also don't overthink it. We can't help but overthink it. We overthink lines, we overthink parts, we overthink this performance, but it's like you have to have the people around you that you trust, and if they say it's good, it's good, and then move on. And if a record takes 3 weeks, if a record takes 3 years, just do it.
Yeah.
Put the time in until you are like, you've said what you need to say.
Right.
And then move on and make something else,
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever that comes out, you deal with that. But it's like, you can move on later, It's like, yeah.
I never asked this question, but one of my favorite podcasts always asks this at the end, and I'm curious with you. If there was like a movie of your life, what's the arc of your character? And maybe who plays you?
Who plays me?
Yeah. Live or dead?
Ooh, Cary Grant. Because that would just be awesome.
Yeah.
Like I would just be like, I don't care if he doesn't look like me.
Perfect.
Put on a fake beard and
Yeah.
long wig and but
The biography of Adam Odor starring Denzel Washington.
yeah, it should be fantastic.
Yeah. What do you think that arc is? Do you think that's a movie that is like your whole life, like a biopic, or do you think there's like that one moment in your life that could be like pulled out and put on a pedestal for like a movie?
I just think I would say the movie would start with the Moon Pies.
That's amazing to hear.
Because even though
you made 20 years of hits before that.
And it's crazy because it's like, and I love, like, I look back and like when I talk to people, especially to me, I'm still everybody else's age.
Yeah.
If not younger than everybody.
Sure, you feel like a kid.
I don't realize that, I'm as old as I am. I'm 45.
That's good though, right?
And I think so because it feels young and everything. But it's like, I don't realize that, like, talking to Dallas, he grew up with records that I made.
That you made.
And stuff like that. And I'm like, it kind of boggles my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say this today, but like when you were talking about doing those records with Lloyd in 95, I was like, that was born in 95.
Yeah. Yeah. Our first record together was 99. So
wow.
Yeah. So yeah. And it's funny because I felt like I was just getting comfortable in my own skin.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the accolades and the awards and, the platinums and all that sort of stuff were happening at the same time, we were also doing things on our own.
Yeah.
Like I try to tell people, and we talk about it. We talked about it in the Bad Truth podcast, but I'm like, back then we had to force our way into having venues book us, and there was no distributor.
Yeah.
We were just like, PatGreen.com was the first place you could ever buy Ragweed records and Cory Mara records and all that sort of stuff, because he was nice enough. He had an online store.
He's just nice enough to put it in.
And he was just like, yeah, I've got a warehouse, and we'll ship the stuff out, And so you'd go to patgreen.com until LoneStarMusic.com happened.
Wow.
You went to patgreen.com, and we created our whole world.
Did it feel like punk?
I get, yes. Like when you read the stuff about punk, yeah, because we're just doing it on our own, and we want it to be comparable to Nashville, but we weren't at the time.
I feel like that's me and my group now.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like we're just now figuring out how to put mics in phase in a way. Like we're just now figuring out the mechanics behind all this shit we like to do. But we've all been doing it for a decade.
Yeah. And it's like that's where
you never stop learning.
Yeah, you can never stop learning, and you can't you can't keep yourself in this box.
Yeah.
Like you have to embrace something new. Now, like I'm not a TikTok guy.
Me either.
I don't get it.
Do you think our quality of life, like even if it's just touring, do you think it would be better if we leaned into that?
I think you should just see what your fan base embraces.
Yeah.
And I definitely think I think it's worth finding if there's a TikTok thing, like what do you enjoy doing out of it? Like I know people that just like to do acoustic songs.
Right.
And maybe talk to it and stuff like that, and they do well on it.
Yeah.
And they might not get the big, huge push, but they got the followers.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, and it goes to Instagram and stuff like that, and it's just like, I think you just find out what you're comfortable with, but be consistent with it.
I think also it's like finding that, but I also think it's like finding what can translate to meet in the seats for me personally.
Yeah.
It's like I'm more focused on that. That's my North Star more so than numbers on a screen, really.
I'm with you on that.
And so if you get a video going viral on TikTok and that's not even translating to your Spotify streams, it's definitely not translating to your ticket sales. You know what I mean? Just because something happened and hit. And so it's like, yeah, I think I'm still kind of navigating like what my fan base wants as far as content, where that's supposed to live. But I am figuring out like what I like to do. I like to make records, and I like to have conversations like this. And so it's like, okay, that's two things that's content. Let's make content out of that.
Yeah.
And if it needs to be short form on something like TikTok, let's just chop this up.
Yes.
Rather than setting aside other time to make other content for this thing.
Yeah.
It's like if it needs something short, let's chop this long thing up.
Yeah.
And do it.
I'm with you on that, especially, if that's something easy for you to do, then I think the biggest thing that anybody wants to see is consistency.
Yeah, dude.
Somebody wants to see that you're a road
That's what the
dog,
algorithm wants to see too.
Yeah. It's like if you are going to like do TikToks 3 times a week,
you have to commit.
Yeah, and have them always do it the same days, around the same time, all that sort of stuff, because then people can trust you. It's the the Friday and the Thursday night ABC and all that stuff. When I was growing up, it's just like you knew
it was trusted.
Your favorite shows were going to be on at this time.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live is still on the same time every Saturday night.
Right.
And stuff like that. And you trust it even in the lesser seasons when you're like, the rating's not as good or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
It was still there.
Yeah. It's still there. And so it is definitely, TV for a younger age.
Yeah.
For
sure.
It's TV for that, and other people like the older generation is embracing it because there's how-to videos on there now.
Yeah.
And it's it's like, and ultimately I still think YouTube's king.
I do too. I mean, that's, this podcast can be anywhere that podcasts happen, but yeah, YouTube is like I guess what we're thinking about when we're making stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff you and Darby are going to be making visually. It's like, okay, it's like, if Hulu doesn't want it, it's like, YouTube is right here, and everyone has it in their pocket.
Yes.
And
arguably it's even the better idea because you can sell it, or you can stream it free, or you can do however you want to do to it.
I think for artists where I am and where Darby is, yeah, I think YouTube is like our promised land of connecting
Yeah.
to a bigger audience. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any type of advice for me personally with like moving forward with anything to do with clients, how to get more clients, how to keep those relationships coming back to make more records?
I think the biggest thing is you just said it, relationships.
Yeah.
So if you believe in somebody,
Yeah.
just start the conversation.
Yeah.
But if they choose to go somewhere else, just don't try to force anything.
Right.
That's what I've realized
Right.
in my life, is just that you can't force an artist to do something, even if you know it's for the better for
Yeah.
them and stuff. It's like everybody has to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
But I feel like I look at me and McClure, I look at me and Lloyd, like, I mean, we're still friends and doing stuff. I don't do that much with Lloyd, but,
Right.
but we still check in on each other at least once a month, since 1999.
Right.
And Mac and I got away from each other, but we started seeing each other again, and he got into a good place with his life. I got into a good place with my life, and now we're like creating like crazy.
Yeah, it's nice to see.
And it's like, and it feels good, and it's like no time has gone by, but at the same time, we're both
A lot
matured.
older. Yeah,
and
you guys
like,
know a lot more now for sure.
And I think at some point, again, my movie would start at the Moon Pies, and I don't think it's hit its peak yet.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm finally ultimately trust myself. And if somebody doesn't want to listen to that, I don't try to force it. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
That's,
I think sometimes those decisions come down to like a budget too. They're like, Adam, I want to work with you. I can't afford to right now.
Yeah.
When those things happen, is it more just like, well, if you got to go make something, go make something. Come back whenever you can.
I always tell them, like, go make something.
Yeah.
Just make something.
Because like what keeps me, from working with, X, Y, and Z producer or going to X, Y, and Z place, apart from having this spot here or Yellow Dog to go, I mean, why go anywhere else when I can go to those two spots right there? But it's like, it comes down a lot of the times like, I don't have the scratch to give it to you up front,
Yeah.
like.
And sometimes, like, if you might have, like, we want to make this record
But I know,
together.
but it's like I don't have the scratch, but I need to make something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it might be like there's a specific record the two of us may want to make together.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have the scratch now, so make another record with something else.
Yeah.
Hold on to those
Yeah.
songs.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you, like, Dallas Burroughs, the perfect example. He had the songs that he sent us,
Yeah.
and then he knew what he wanted to do with Lloyd and sent the other songs to Lloyd.
Perfect.
And stuff. And he sent us the other tunes, but he was like, this is going to be for this specific record.
Right.
And it was just like, I didn't get into those because I was like, I'd already went through these 20 tunes, 25 tunes,
Right.
and I know which ones I feel strongly about, which was great because we obviously, me and McClure kind of picked a lot of the same songs, and they were all different ones than he expected.
Nice.
And then so when we got in the studio and did them, it was just like, yeah. But
I feel like it always ends up like that too.
But it's like, it's that thing of like, hey, if you have a project you want to do with the specific people in mind, just wait it out until it's ready to happen,
I have going back to like planning like that. 2 or 3 years ago, I was telling you about wanting to do a live comedy country song album, and it's like I'm still like finding the place that I want to do it in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I have this idea. I know who I want to be involved, and I could probably find the money for it pretty easily. But it's like I don't even know where I want to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's like I sometimes I'll try out songs like that in different places. I'm like, okay, not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, because you need to find a place that like people listen.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, Clocks and Mirrors just dropped. You can get it anywhere you download, illegally stream, or buy music. I personally suggest you go into GarrettBryan.com, because if you download it from there, if you purchase it from there, I get all the money. Like, once again, it's called Clocks and Mirrors.
I had the weird experience of McClure and Ragweed, but also Jimmy LaFave.
Dude, I was going to ask you about Jimmy LaFave.
And so it's like, and it's like when people realize that I did Texoma and Never Is a Moment, which I still think is one of the best songs ever fucking
100%.
written, and I'm so proud of that recording of that song.
You should be.
And just like of what we captured of Jimmy and stuff. But I'm like, So I'm on that because Jimmy's the old school Oklahoma
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
from the 90s and stuff. And then McClure is that too because Tom Skinner.
Right.
And then it's really crazy because one of Darby's dad's friend ended up, he was the drummer in the Skinner Brothers back in the 90s. And he sent me video of like the farm in 95.
Wow.
And stuff like that, and just like, and all this sort of stuff, and it's just them, and it's Jimmy and the Red Dirt Rangers, and the
Yeah.
Skinners and stuff, just hanging out,
Wow.
and stuff like that, and it's crazy because they just didn't have the technology that we have now,
Right.
but they were all hanging out and just creating together and writing songs together and just doing.
Well, other than just like making songs, was the point of all that whole get together like playing shows? Was that like the extent of it because of not having the technology?
I think, yeah, you just wanted to play live, and then when you weren't playing live, you were just hanging out playing music. Like, you just had to play music.
Yeah.
And that was...
It's Bolin and all those guys, right?
Yeah, they come from that, like, we have to create.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we're creating for 5 people, 5,000 people, 50,000, it doesn't matter. We just have to create. And that is something that I think is kind of uniquely Oklahoman.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I feel that there are definitely pockets of that, but like all that whole area in that time,
Yeah.
and maybe because there was, I'd say less distractions, but it's a different sort of distractions, but everybody communally came together just to, here's what I just did.
Yeah.
This happened to me, I just wrote this. This is what's going on and stuff. And we had that like in the early, I mean, I know, when we all moved down with Dub Miller and started this whole thing, I mean, everybody would get together and just write.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about scheduling rights and stuff like that. It was just like
Just
you were
what we're
hanging
doing.
out, trying to show each other songs that you knew.
Yeah.
And here's something else I wrote and did all that sort of stuff. And it's like when we're making Pearl Snaps, I'm like, hey, Jason, get to know Dub Miller. Dub, know Jason and stuff like that. And then Dub's leaving, and I'd made this first Randy Rogers band record, and it was just like, well, they need a new drummer, and I know Les is leaving, Dub and Brady.
You know James Tollison? Jamie? He wrote that Pearl Snaps with
Oh, okay,
Jason.
yes,
Yeah. He lives like an hour or less north of here.
Nice.
And like, I was just saying, Texas is just big compared to Oklahoma, but we're doing that here. Me and the homies of this West Texas area, we're gigging and making records and trying to make content, and we're celebrating each other's birthdays and getting together and picking and eating and stuff, and it's even spreading out to like him,
Yeah.
an hour away to come get together just to be communal.
I think that's a big thing. When we were at Americana Fest a couple weeks ago, like one night as everybody was going out and just partying balls and stuff like that, and you're shaking hands and stuff. It's like, I barely drink. Darby doesn't drink at all.
Right.
But at some point I was like, hey, who wants to go back to the Airbnb and write?
Yeah.
Because that's what we're here for. Like,
right.
As you songwriter, musician types aren't around each other all the time. Just come back and write. And even if it's stupid.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It does. Yeah, man. You could literally throw it away tonight.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
But just do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Doing it.
Get into a room and not think about the fact that I want to go to a bar and,
dude, and definitely don't write about it.
Just spend it. It's just like, just go in and write. Just hang out, tell stories, and, have instruments in our hands.
Have you dabbled in the writing world of film, not scoring, but like trying to write scenes?
Yes.
Have you ever done things like that?
Yeah.
Are you disciplined enough to finish?
Yeah, well, we had done, in fact, there is, on One to Grow On record, there's a song called Whose Side You're On,
Uh-huh.
and there's a song called Brother, and those were written for this little independent movie.
Cool.
And Whose Side You're On was actually titled Thunder and Lightning, and it's just acoustic, but they wanted something townsy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brother was just another, like, they had a scene, and they kind of had a feel.
Yeah.
And they turned it down and went with another song, which is fine. And we just sat on that song. And then what's funny about that song, Brother, is it was written acoustically, and we tried to cut it like 4 different times, 4 different ways. It was supposed to go on. It didn't make the movie, so we're gonna put it on cheap silver. We tried 2 different ways to cut it in cheap silver. One is a big 6/8, like bluegrassy waltz that kept changing keys.
Wow.
One was a real like 70s country funk thing and everything. And we did all the stuff. We could never get it, and it wasn't until I was listening to a Questlove podcast with Bootsy Collins, and he said something about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and I was just like, that's how we got to do Brother. We've got to make it an epic riff and just tell the story.
Wow.
I called Mike up after my run because I was listening to the podcast on a run, and I called him up and I was like, listen to this. This is how we should do Brother. And then we walked in and did it. And
I love
it was
that.
just like, and it became this thing. But it's just like, I like forced limitations.
Yeah, I feel like that's when you can make something.
Yes.
Is when you're like, here's the like if it's a pasture, it's like here's the fence line.
Yeah.
Don't go past that. It's like, okay, now I know what to make.
Yes.
It's almost like going in the kitchen. You sometimes, because there's all these toys at our fingertips in this studio, so many instruments, so many MIDI, so many things.
Yes.
And it's like going in the kitchen and trying to make a meal with every ingredient that you have. It's like, what kind of spaghetti is that going to be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Spaghetti
needs 3 things.
I try to tell every band this, every artist this, that with technology, every band can make Sgt. Pepper's, but everybody forgets to make Meet the Beatles.
Right.
And you got to do that. You have to introduce the world to your art and then grow.
Yes.
And then grow as an artist and stuff like that. And
Right.
you need that. You need to introduce the world to yourself.
That was a great piece of advice.
And it's like, and I love the Stan Lee-ism with Marvel Comics was, he said, every comic ever written is somebody's first comic. So it's just like you have to, whether or not the first page has a quick backstory, some kid is picking this up, they're not going to know what's going on in the story. So you have to have a brief synopsis of what's been going on with the hero and the villain and stuff like that. And I feel like, your 8th record may be somebody's first record, and 100%. Go back. I mean, I remember my first Led Zeppelin record was Led Zeppelin 3.
Right.
And then I went back and was like, whoa, wait. They're not this acoustic band, but they're this crazy blues, rock, almost metal band.
Right.
And stuff like that. And of course, my first Pink Floyd record, my favorite band, was Dark Side.
Yeah.
And then I heard The Wall. And then I went back and I liked that stuff. But then for me, there was the final cut was like the last Roger Waters record with Pink Floyd. I was like, this record is brilliant.
Yeah.
It's not sonically as great.
Yeah.
But it's still a fantastic record. And then, as a kid, A Momentary Lapse of Reason came out. And then, but I know so many people. I remember Pulse came out when I was in high school, and that was kind of like I was away from that stuff. But so many people I talked to, Pulse is their favorite Pink Floyd record.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, it's so awesome to me. But you never know what record somebody's going to come into your band at.
Yeah, totally.
And stuff like that. So each one is going to be new and different. And, and it's just like, I think of how many Cheap Silver is the first record a lot of people ever heard of the Moon Pies.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me too.
It's just like I think of that, and I'm just like, or even when the One to Grow On record came out, it's just like, wait. Then you start talking about Cheap Silver, and I'm like, wait, you did a record at Abbey Road? Right. I'm like, oh, you don't know that? Well, yeah, check this out.
Yeah. I thought you knew we're in the know.
Yeah, and then it's like people find out about the Gary Stewart record. Yeah, and they're just like, wait, what? And it's just like, and that still slowly grows. Because it's like, I find a lot of older people that are huge Gary Stewart fans. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what? And it's like, oh, yeah, listen to this. If you like Gary Stewart, here's the songs that never made an album.
Right.
And
what you wish you heard.
Yeah.
You've literally had that conversation before.
Yeah.
Man, thank you so much for doing this.
Dude, what a blast.
I've had a blast.
Dude, this is,
I literally asked you everything I wrote down, and we talked about a bunch of cool shit.
Nice. Yeah.
I love you, dog.
I love you, brother.
Man,
Man.
I love your work. Thanks for doing this.
Dude, yeah, we'll do it again.